Welcome to FedScoop TV. I'm Wyatt Cash, and we're here at the Red Hat 2016 Government Symposium. And I'm here with Toan. Toan is the Director of the National Security Programs with Red Hat. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Terrific. So I'd like to ask first, we're talking about all things open source in the government context. How have you seen the evolution of open source making headway in the federal government over the last couple of years?
You know, I'll answer that question by looking at what has open source done for us as private citizens. The largest content provider now is Facebook, and yet they provide no content. The largest taxi service in the world is Uber, yet they own no real estate. All of those technologies are driven by open source. Simultaneous in government, what we're seeing for services for citizens is things like, for instance, today, members of the intelligence community will be talking about how they're using open source to move to clouds. And they're doing that, they're moving to the clouds because they can get efficiencies, they can lower the cost, they can get better development and better applications from it, right? So what we're really seeing is a full embrace of open source within the government. And what I think you're going to start seeing is in the future, it's going to be the default. It's so easy to use. It is trusted. It is tried. There's lots of use cases where people have used open source to be very successful in their programs across numerous programs. So I think that's what we're seeing with open source right now. And it's great to be in an event like this where you hear a lot of government and members of the SI community talk about using open source for their projects.
Well, now you're specialized or involved in the sort of security programs. Tell us a little bit about your perspective on the perception of security as it relates to open source, and in some ways why people can trust open source even maybe more than what they're doing in their own shops.
Sure. So let me kind of talk to you about how open source happens. Open source starts originally as a project. It's completely open, and that means that if there's anybody trying to insert nefarious code in there, it's easily discovered by everybody else. And when it's discovered like that, and it's not hidden in the back rooms of some development shop, it's more likely that you're going to find faulty code, malicious code, nefarious code. So in that respect, because you have the whole world looking at this project that comes to that becomes a real software, you can take away some of the bad and malicious code, but not just bad and malicious code, just maybe some well-intentioned developer used not a best practice. And so other members of the open source community can go in and help them with that code, that little piece of code to make the software better. Ultimately, everybody benefits from kind of having that open and collaborative effort around building applications.
Well, and as we know from Joy's law, all the smartest people in the world usually work for somebody else. And so having many eyes on it obviously accelerates, presumably, the ability to advance security controls in software development. So let me ask a little about IT modernization. That's been an important theme, certainly from the current U.S. CIO. How does open source benefit the evolution of IT modernization?
Sure. So if you look at, so there's a big initiative about making sure that every project within the government contributes back to other projects, right? Back in the days when this wasn't the practice, you had 10 different programs or N number of programs essentially paying the same cost to do the same thing. When you're able to share the code as a tool in a toolbox that a developer might use, they no longer have to do that. Ultimately, you get a better end product. You get a product that's produced less expensive, and you get one that can pass the rigors of security credentials. Oftentimes, within my space that I work in, security is so important, and being able to inherit other security baselines by reusing code is a good thing.
Makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
Well, lastly, what other areas, maybe in terms of collaboration, mobility, speed, for example, can benefit from open source and the open source community?
Well, I would say all of it, Wyatt, because if you strip away the products that are produced by open source, and you understand the way in which humans work in a collaborative manner, I think what's great about it is the saying that not any one of us is smarter than all of us, right? And so groupthink is a good thing here. There's a wise proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I think if you use that and apply that towards the principles of open source in a collaborative way, you can quickly use somebody else's idea and understand that, if you don't care about receiving credit, that you can build, and what you really care about is producing a better application, then you can use somebody else's best practices and trusted code. I have the privilege of working at Red Hat, where we harness kind of that ethos about collaboration. And the ethos of collaboration happens in our decision-making process. When we have very complex problems, we open it up to the community, our fellow employees, to discuss. And ultimately, we use that methodology to come up with better ideas. And sometimes, just because you have the rank or the position doesn't mean that your idea wins. So I think if we can foster that in a better climate where people are collaborating, I think we'd be in a better place.
Well, Toan, thank you very much for being with us today, sharing some of your insights with us.
Sure, thank you.
I'm Wyatt Cash with FedScoop TV. Look for more of our coverage at fedscoop.com. Thanks for being with us.